Making baklava from scratch might sound intimidating, but actually it isn't if you know how to do it. In this video, I'm gonna show you how to make delicious Turkish baklava 2 ways using homemade phyllo step-by-step instruction without any fancy or expensive ingredients or equipment. So after trying this recipe, not only are you gonna have a delicious dessert, but also your baking skills will be taken to another level. Make sure to watch all the way until the end and give it a try. Contrary to its luxurious impression, baklava is not that pricey to make at home. All you need are flour, salt, sugar, nuts, and oil. Even if you try both recipes, it doesn't cost you more than $15 in total. So the first one we're gonna make is something called rolled baklava or burma baklava in Turkish. I hope the pronunciation is correct. It is made by filling phyllo with nuts and rolling it into a thin cylinder. It's a very popular kind and you may have seen it somewhere. So start by preparing the filling. This time I use walnuts, but you can certainly use pistachios instead. Coarsely grind the nuts in a food processor or chop with a knife. They're gonna be like this. If you use a knife, they're gonna be more uneven than with a food processor, but that's totally fine. They taste delicious either way. And season with a cinnamon powder and mix. Then divide it into 4 equal portions by eyeballing. If you wanna use a scale, each portion will be about 40 grams. Set them aside and we're gonna move on to making the dough, which will eventually be stretched out into a thin sheet that is thinner than paper. But when it comes to the ingredients, there are no special ones added. In a large bowl, add the water and the salt. Whisk until dissolved. And then add the bread flour. Mix until there's no dry flour left. Start mixing with a dough scraper or spatula and finish with your hand, which shouldn't take more than 2 minutes. I have made this recipe no kneading to simplify the process. Once all the flour is hydrated, cover with plastic wrap and let it sit for at least 30 minutes to develop gluten. Since this is a very lean dough and doesn't contain any ingredients that inhibit gluten formation, such as oil, sugar, egg, or milk, it's gonna be very smooth and strong within 30 minutes. After 30 minutes, the dough has become strong. Now remove the plastic wrap and divide into 4. Each portion will be around 130 grams. It's a little sticky, feel free to dust with flour if necessary. And then we're gonna give it a fold. Dust with flour, flatten it out with the hands, and fold the edge over the center. Turn and repeat. Once you fold all the edges, pinch the seam to seal and you have a nice smooth ball. Do the same for the rest. And then we're gonna go ahead and roll it out. Dust with the flour and roll it out into a circle, about 15 cm or 6 inches in diameter. It's gonna be like this. Resemble a little thick tortilla, maybe a bad example tortilla. And then pour at least 4 to 6 tablespoons of vegetable oil or any kind of unflavored oil in a bowl. Spread it out with a brush and place the rolled out dough. And then pour at least 4 tablespoons of oil over the dough. Then brush the spread again. Make sure every part of the dough is covered with oil. This oil penetrates the dough and loosens the dough structure, allowing it to be stretched thin. Do the same to the rest. Roll out the remaining dough as well. And alternately place the dough and the oil so that all the surface of each piece are covered with oil. And finally pour the oil on top of last dough. That'll be a good idea to swirl the bowl to ensure all the edges are covered with oil. And then leave for at least 1 hour to loosen the gluten structure. Since I'm gonna do the next step in 1 hour, I don't cover it with anything, cause the oil on the surface prevents it from drying. But if you wanna do the next step later on, like after 4 hours or even the next day, make sure to cover with plastic wrap and keep in the fridge. So after 1 hour, we're gonna make the homemade phyllo sheet after cleaning up the table thoroughly. Also, at this point, preheat the oven to 160°C or 320°F. There are 2 methods to make phyllo. One is the dry method, where you use an extremely long rolling pin named baklava to roll out dough. It is so difficult and takes months or years to learn. The other is the wet method, where you stretch it out by hand after loosening the dough with oil. That is exactly what I'm doing now, and it's far easier than the dry method. The whole process is something like this. We're gonna pull each side gradually and carefully. In the end, the size will be 50 by 70 cm rectangle. So now let me explain the details. Take one from the bowl and place it in the middle of the table. I take one side with both hands and shake it up and down while trying to pull gently outward, so it stretches out. Once it stretches to some extent, take the other side and stretch it by shaking up and down. Once you stretch it out somewhat, move on to the other side and repeat the same thing. This motion is exactly the same as fixing the blanket every morning. By shaking your hands up and down, the wrinkles of your blanket stretches out, right? The dough keeps getting thinner as you go. We wanna stretch out all the edges as evenly as possible. And there are a few things that I'm careful of. First, I keep my fingers flat like this. We wanna use a larger area of our fingers instead of holding them upright like this, which can cause the sheet tear easily, so they must be kept flat. Also try to stretch a large area all the way to the opposite side, because if you stretch only the area around the edges, the middle remains thick. You don't need to try not to have a hole drastically. By the time it is stretched out widely, it will most likely have some holes. Even if you have many holes, they never affect the taste or the final appearance, so no worries. And keep going. Oh, by the way, in this channel, I'm always posting food recipes after dozens of tests and research without compromising, so consider subscribing and give it a thumbs up. Once it stretches out into a 50 by 70 rectangle and looks like this. Now trim off the edges, which are so thick, and after baking, they will become hard and taste doughy, basically taste awful. So we remove all of them, discard, and only eat the thin, delicious parts. So now I got a nice, beautiful phyllo sheet and start shaping it into rolled baklava. First, divide it in half vertically. Take one portion of the walnuts that has been divided earlier and spread them on the bottom 1/3 of the right dough evenly. And put 2 chopsticks on the bottom edge to make the rolling process easier. Pick up the bottom edge with a scraper or fingertips. Put it over the chopsticks and roll it forward. Keep in mind, we wanna roll without pressing too hard or tightening. We want some air between the layers. The more air it has, the faster it'll bake and the crispier it'll be. Once you roll all the way to the top, place it back on the bottom of the left dough and roll it toward the top edge once more. Once it reaches the top edge and looks like a long cylinder, take it and push the 2 ends together toward the center using both hands, so that it's gonna have the signature wrinkles of rolled baklava and more air inside. And then remove the chopsticks, trim off the edges for a better look, and divide into 3. Place them in the tin with some distance between them. And repeat the same thing to the remaining 3 dough pieces. You're gonna stretch it out 4 times in total. It might sound a bit much for some people, but I promise it won't feel monotonous. Stretching out the dough is such a fun job, and I even find it kinda therapeutic. Once you try, you will agree with that. Once that's done, you should have 12 rolls in there. At this point, I didn't, but you can optionally pour 40 grams of melted ghee over them for extra richness. So now start baking. We're gonna bake until they're golden brown and with the top and the sides both crispy. It takes 60 to 70 minutes, but any oven is different, so the cooking time may differ. Adjust the time accordingly. Once the timer goes off, take it out and check the doneness by scratching with a fork. Now mine has a crispy top and sides and looks golden brown. I'm gonna go ahead and finish with the sugar syrup. So put it back in the oven and prepare the sugar syrup. In a small pan, add all the ingredients, which are water, sugar, and salt. Bring it to a boil over high heat. Once it boils and all the sugar dissolves, take the baklava from the oven and pour the piping hot syrup over the hot baklava. Yes, that's a lot of syrup, and you might be worrying if it could ruin all the crispiness that has been made with a lot of efforts. That's totally fine. They will stay crispy. You can see the perfect results in the taste test at the end. So let them sit for at least 2 hours to absorb the syrup. And so far, what I showed you is rolled baklava. On top of nuts filling and crispy phyllo, you can even add other ingredients like cream filling to it, just like this Mussel baklava, which has aromatic pistachios and sweet, rich milk cream inside. Pistachio milk, you can imagine they pair perfectly, right? So now, let me show you how to make my version of Mussel baklava. The process of making the dough as well as phyllo sheet is exactly the same. Stretch the dough out into a thin sheet and trim off the thick parts, just like we did for rolled baklava. Once you got a nice thin phyllo on the table, divide vertically into 4. We're gonna put the fillings. 30g pistachios and 1 heaped teaspoon of milk cream are filled in one baklava. The milk cream is so simple to make. In a pan, add all the ingredients, which are milk, cornstarch, and sugar. Whisk well until no lumps remain. Cook on medium to medium-high heat until thickened, which takes a few minutes. Keep stirring to prevent it from burning. Once it thickens, cool completely. Once cooled, whisk well again to smooth it out, and divide into 6 ready to use. Put half of the nuts on the bottom, and then the cream on top of them, and then the rest of the nuts on top, so that the cream is located in the middle. And roll it forward while bringing both sides inward, so the filling is wrapped securely and won't spill out. Once it reaches the top edge, place it on the bottom edge of the next dough and roll it forward once again. In the second rolling, just roll forward without taking both sides inward. Once the second rolling is finished, trim off the excess if there is, and pinch the edges firmly, and it kinda look like a bonbon candy. And it will look better if you gave it some lines like this. And place it in the tin. Repeat the same process for the rest. In total, we're gonna stretch out 3 dough pieces out of 4, and make 6 Mussel baklava, so there will be 1 dough left, which you can use with any filling you like. Not only nuts, but also some chocolate will be great. If you want something savory, cheese and ham would be a nice combination. And before baking, you can pour 40g of melted ghee over them and bake at 160°C for 50 to 60 minutes until the sides and the top both crispy and look golden brown. Once the timer rings, check the doneness. Mine is perfect, so I put it back in the oven and prepare the sugar syrup. The recipe is the same as the rolled baklava. Combine all the ingredients, and once the sugar dissolves, take the baklava out of the oven, pour the piping hot syrup over the piping hot baklava. It's kinda satisfying to watch, isn't it? And let it sit to absorb for a minimum of 2 hours. Once that's done, it has absorbed a lot of syrup and the inside of the baklava has become juicy. Remove the cream spilled out with a spoon. And you can garnish with some nuts. Pour a few drops of syrup on them. It acts as a glue and the nuts will stick to them better. So now they are all done and ready to eat. Let's see how they are. First, rolled baklava.
Let's try it out.
You can tell every single layer is nicely crisped up, right? Also, the syrup has sufficiently absorbed into it. It's so juicy. I adjusted my sugar syrup to be slightly thinner than that used by most Turkish baklava makers. This ratio gives it sufficient sweetness and juiciness without making it too heavy. And it doesn't crystallize even after sitting for a long time. So I have exclusively been using this for other Turkish desserts too. Next, Mussel baklava. Try it out. This would have been good enough only with pistachio, but with milk cream on top of it, tastes divine. Anyway, once you acquire the skill of making homemade phyllo, it's gonna broaden the range of your cooking, and you'll be able to make any pie you like with it. Not only baklava, but also apple pie, meat pie, Greek spinach pie, literally anything. And Thailand pancake is also made with a similar dough. So once you try it, let me know how it turns out. Don't forget to subscribe and give it a thumbs up. Thanks for watching, and I see you in the next one.